Welcome to MMAfighting.com's Strikeforce Henderson versus Babalu 2 preview show alongside Strikeforce middleweight fighter Luke Rockhold. I'm Ariel Helwani, and we're coming at you inside the Scott Trade Center in St. Louis, Missouri, where on Saturday night, Strikeforce brings its brand of MMA to the Show Me State for the second time in just 7 months. And Luke, a very interesting card going down Saturday night. First things first, though, we haven't seen you in a while. You're supposed to fight in October. Tell us, how are you feeling, and when can you expect to fight again soon?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm coming around. The shoulder injuries just take so long, and you're always using them. So I'm just trying to avoid using as much as possible. I'd say I got another month left of healing, and then I can get into a full training camp. So I'd say about 3 months out. I wish I could get back on that January card in San Jose and represent, but it's pushing it. So I'm really, I want to have a good performance, and I want to give myself a full training camp, stepping up to this next level. So I'm gonna be ready. I'm doing what I can. I'm doing my jabs and my kicks, and I'm losing my mind doing it, but I'm gonna be sharp. Trust me, everything's gonna be sharp.
Well, that is good to hear. And obviously, the guy that you were supposed to fight in October was Matt Lindland. He's fighting here on Saturday night against Robbie Lawler. An interesting middleweight clash, which perhaps, considering the fact that you say you might come back maybe February, March, you might face the winner of this fight. So who do you like in this one?
This is a tough match to call. I think a lot of people pick Robbie, but in this match, I can't count out Lindland. Lindland's, he's a grinder, and Robbie's never been known to be that good off his back, and I think Lindland can get him there, as long as he avoids a big shot. So it's hard for me to really pick a winner, but it could go either way. But Lindland either grinds out decision, or obviously Robbie catches him early, I think, rather than late.
You were preparing to fight Matt Lindland, so let's just say you were in Robbie Lawler's corner for this fight. What would you tell him to do in order to beat Matt?
I'd be making him train off his back, pretty much the whole camp, and just if he settles on the ground once he gets taken down, I think it's gonna be a long night for him. But if he focused on just bouncing back up right off the bat, then I think he could win this fight, no doubt. It all depends on where his mind's at once he hits the ground.
Isn't it amazing that Lindland's obviously 40, he's been around the sport a long time. It feels like Lawler has been around for so long. He's only 28. Isn't it amazing how many fights this guy has under his belt in wars, and he's only 28?
Yeah, no, I was listening to that in the press the pre-fight interviews or whatever. Lindland was like, Robbie's been in the sport just as long as me. I'm 40 and he's 28. So it was like, where's the comparison? But yeah, he's been around. Some people just start early. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely got a wealth of knowledge in MMA. But I just don't believe he's evolved as well as some of the guys. So he's a deadly striker, no doubt about it. But it's a good matchup for the two. So Lindland probably hasn't evolved too much either, but he still has he can get the fight where he wants, and so either way, you know what I mean.
Officially though, you're picking the law, because you can't stay on the fence here on our show.
I can't stay on the fence here.
No.
I'll take the law and the grinder. Yeah. So.
Okay, fair enough. Another fight that might be a grinder, Dan Henderson versus Babalu. That's the main event. These guys fought 10 years ago, but both men say that really that fight was not indicative of what we're going to see on Saturday night. Henderson looked good in the beginning of his fight, against Jake Shields in his Strikeforce debut, but then obviously Shields was able to wear him out, and he had a bad weight cut and said he was injured walking into that one. Babalu has looked good as of late. It seems to be a bit of a styles clash here. Not really sure if Henderson wants to go to the ground with Babalu. How would you see this fight playing out?
Like a grinder, I don't think this match is gonna be a grind out. I think it's gonna be a tough fight, no doubt. But Babalu's got his kicks are on point, in his last fight, and his striking. But Henderson, I think he's hungry right now. And after that last fight, and it sounds like he's comfortable at 205, no weight cut, and he's got a lot more power than anybody out there. So I think he avoids. I don't think Babalu can get him to the ground. And I think he finally gets in, between 3 rounds and gets a big shot.
Do you think he finishes him?
I think I can't say early or late, but I think Henderson's going to get to him throughout the 15 minutes for sure.
So you're not one of those who think that Henderson's best days are behind him?
I just don't see that right now. I didn't see that in his last fight. Jake is just so relentless. I've trained with Jake, countless times, and I know what he brings to the table. I knew what he could do to Henderson if he got later in the rounds, and Henderson still survived all 5 rounds with Jake, into the 5, and he wasn't feeling that good. So I think he's coming on strong on this fight. He's hungry, and I see him taking this fight, by knockout, in the 15 somewhere.
At this point in his career, do you think Henderson should just stick to light heavyweight, not move back down to 185? And I know you're part of that division. You want to see him there, but considering all he's been through, he seems very comfortable on the scales here at 205. He looks good. You think his days of fighting at middleweight are over?
I hope he does, He's a dangerous guy, but I've always admired Dan. He's a legend, and I like him. He's a good guy, And I think he's comfortable there, and I've heard talk about him moving back down to middleweight, but it's wherever he goes, I think he's just fine. I think he can handle any 205 pounder out there with his wrestling. There's a lot bigger guys at 205. He's not per se a big guy, but he makes up for that in his wrestling. And if he comes down to 85, he's going to be real tough too, So he's comfortable wherever he goes. I'm sure he'll be just fine.
Earlier today I conducted a sort of informal poll on Twitter asking the fans. There's also a UFC card on a Saturday night, the Tough Finale.
Yeah.
Which fight are they most looking forward to between this card and the UFC card? The one that was unanimously the pick from the fans, Paul Daly, Scott Smith. I think a lot of fans are expecting some fireworks out of those guys. Here's the question I asked to you: any chance that fight goes the distance in your mind?
Not a chance. No. Not a chance in hell. I see that those guys going at it. Paul Daly, he's a shorter guy, and he's going to get inside the reach of Scott Smith. So, anything can happen when you get into that guy's range. Obviously Paul Daly can put anybody out himself, but it's going to be a back and forth. And I don't know what to say about this fight because Scott's never been at 70, right, and how he's going to look and what kind of power he's going to have there. He does have those hands of steel. So. You want a winner?
I'll get to the winner in a second.
Okay.
I want to ask you, who has more to prove in your mind, considering the fact that Daly was released from the UFC, a bad showing against Koscheck, a good friend of yours, and Scott Smith, dropping down, needs to sort of rejuvenate his career after the loss to Kung Lee. In your mind, who has more to prove on Saturday?
I'd say Daly, no doubt. This is his first big fight coming off the Kos, and nobody's really seen him around, or he's had a couple fights, but on the kind of low key. So. This is he's a high-profile fighter, and still regarded as one of the top guys at 170, and so he's got a lot to lose here. Scott's first time down at 170, and he's got something to prove. But I think Daly, a lot of people are looking to him. Scott's had a lot of Rocky Balboa style fights, and he's just he's a legend for those kind of fights, and so people are gonna love Scott whether or not he wins or loses. He's gonna put on a good fight. Daly, I can't say the same for Daly. He's a love him or hate him kind of guy, and I think he loses, people are off his wagon. If he wins, people will jump on. So, personally, I like Scott. He's a good guy, and I'm not fond of Daly's antics. So, I don't know. So
shocker.
I know. I'd like Scott to pull this one out and put those hands of steel on his face for sure.
You're picking Scott.
I'll take Scott. Let's do this.
Knockout.
There's only one way this fight's going. Knockout.
Okay, now is another fight that you're obviously very interested in, Bigfoot Silva against Mike Kyle. Obviously Mike Kyle, a product of AKA. I'm wondering, considering the fact that he just found out about this fight, 3 or 4 days ago, feels like, how ready is he to fight Bigfoot Silva? He weighed in almost, 40 pounds less than him. How ready is he to fight a top-tier heavyweight like Bigfoot?
I'd say he's pretty ready. Mike's a fighter. He's ready to fight whenever the fight presents itself. So he was training. There's no doubt. He was in the gym. He looked good in his wrestling. I saw him working. We've been working on wrestling a lot with Cormier's. Really revamped our wrestling here at AKA. And so I think and his hands are crisp and a lot better than most people. At heavyweight, and he's a lot faster, no doubt. And I think that's going to be a big problem right here. If Silva chooses to stand with him, he stood and he's had good battles with Fabricio and Orlowski. But I think Mike is, brings a little something different to the feet, a little bit faster, I think, than both those guys. I've seen him box with Orlowski in the gym, and he does just fine. And, I think he's even a little faster. So, as long as it stays on the feet, it's going to be a very close fight. If Silva gets a hold of him, takes him to the ground, it could be a long night for Mike, no doubt. I know Mike's tough, and he's just got to focus on bouncing up. Like I said, it's when people think too much when they hit the ground and then they try to regain position and then focus on getting up. It's not about that. It's about bouncing up. The moment you hit the ground, get on the head, get up. So if he sticks to that and gets to the feet and boxes him out, he could take him out. It's going to be tough to put Silva down. He's got a good chin. It's pretty big.
Yes, it is very big. I'm not sure if you guys noticed this or remember this. The last time Mike Kyle took a fight on short notice was here in St. Louis against Fei Zhao. He knocked out Fei Zhao. So maybe St. Louis is good to Mike Kyle.
St. Louis has been good to Mike Kyle. There's no doubt. I remember him going into that fight sorry. No. But another last minute fight. Get a little worried. I got a little worried for this fight, but seeing his demeanor and how he's carrying it and really thinking about the fight, I think he matches up pretty well. Silva's only, he looks smaller than Mike height-wise, so I think reach, I thought he was a little bit bigger. Actually, I hadn't seen him in person, so he matches up well, and Mike's he's ready to fight. Like I said, last minute notice or not, he's a fighter, and I give him a very good chance at winning this fight.
Just listening to him at the press conference, it seems as though he's walking into this fight with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Like he feels like they've sort of overlooked him at the 205-pound division, and he thinks he deserves a title shot because he beat Fei Zhao, and Fei Zhao's now the champ. What's his mindset like? I mean, is he walking in there with a little bit something to prove?
I'd say so. He rightfully so. He does earn that title shot. He knocked out Fei Zhao 2 fights ago, right?
Right.
And he's won quite a few fights. Won King of the Cage title and title in Australia. So he's winning a lot of fights in between that fight too. Like he said, at the yesterday at the announcement, if it wasn't for Henderson coming up, the legend he is, Mike would be real pissed about that. But it's Henderson, so I mean he earns his right to get back to that shot. But Mike will fight anybody, and he's ready to at heavyweight or light heavyweight. So he's we'll see. I don't know. It's
You're picking Bigfoot, right?
How can I go against my teammate? Yeah, right. No. It's a tough fight, but I can't go against my teammate. If it stays on I'm hoping it stays on the feet, and Mike can outbox him to decision.
Okay, fair enough. I didn't expect you to pick.
I know everyone goes against him. Mike, they offered him that flat rate, and he was pretty pissed about that, and he's vocal about that, and he let everyone know. He's like, screw that, I'm not here to lose, I'm not here for a flat rate, and he offered, he got a little bit lower, but he got the the winning bonus, and he's going to get more. So, Mike's he's confident, and that's the biggest key in this fight is him to be confident and know he can win this fight. When you can't just second guess yourself going into fights, otherwise you're just already beat from the get-go. So
very well said. Okay, let's get your thoughts on one last fight. Ovin St. Preux against Benji Radek. Radek hasn't been seen in 19 months since he lost to Scott Smith in his Strikeforce debut. Fighting at 205. Another fight that was put together on short notice. Ovin St. Preux, looked good in his last fight just a couple of weeks ago. Strikeforce challengers. He has a lot to prove. Obviously, the biggest fight of his career. Who are you expecting to come out and look? You have one guy who just fought a couple of weeks ago. Another guy who hasn't fought in 19 months. They're fighting at this weird sort of catch weight, at least for Benji. Who are you expecting to look good out there?
You know what? I saw OSP or whatever they call him. Yeah, his fight the other week, and he looks like he's an athlete, no doubt about it. And he's got some power just because he's so long. And when he gets to you, it's gonna hurt, no doubt. Not the most technical striker from what I've seen, and not the most technical off his back. I didn't see a lot of movement, and I saw kind of both of them kind of gassed out in that fight. And Benji hasn't been in a long time, but I heard he's training. He helped Rampage train a little bit, and he helped Dennis Hallman train a little bit. So he's been working with some tough guys, and getting in there. And he's a wrestler. He's good on top, and he's good on So I just with the amount of movement that I saw from Ovin St. Preux on the ground and Benji on top, I think Benji, as long as he gets through his length and puts him on his back, I think Benji wins this fight pretty easily.
All right, there you have it. Great stuff here from Luke Rockhold and Mike Chiappetta and Ben Folks. Watch out. I think someone's coming after your job. A big night of MMA coming up tomorrow night. You got two options. If you're a big MMA fan, you got The Ultimate Fighter finale on Spike TV at 9 p.m. Eastern, and then on Showtime at 10 p.m. Eastern, Strikeforce here in St. Louis. A lot of MMA to be had Saturday night, and we'll have all the coverage for you on MMAfighting.com. For Luke Rockhold, I'm Ariel Helwani saying so long from St. Louis.